you know, this is not intended mischief, this is to say, this is important to the town. So, and I'm gonna make sure that this is-
I just, well, I mean, if I do, actually, everyone needs to understand what's not happening.
Yeah,
That's the first thing. And then, you know, they're gonna be doing goal setting again in January, which I know seems like a long way off, but I think it's gonna be before we know it, and it probably will not be that bad timing in regards to any application.
yeah.
People have expressed interest in like, I don't know where they're
Well, I know Antonio's waiting to see this whole thing, you know, and, you know, I'm getting a lot of free lunches from all the
Good for you.
And,
But that means you're having a lot of conversations.
yeah, yeah. On another front, we opened escrow this week for the corporate. So we're probably getting a hold of people for that. And then hopefully we'll be with Tyler and start that process.
So that's just basically us signing off on this.
I mean, you're supposed to provide documents, but I don't think there's any documents on it. Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably just show us the file and we can figure it out.
Okay.
And then, we're hoping to come back to you by mid-October for a pre-app plan. Because we've got the, I mean, the civil engineer and everybody working. Because we're hoping to break the ground next summer.
Good. We will do everything in our
Yeah.
power to make that.
Yeah.
I mean, we are 100% with you.
Yeah, yeah. I know you guys are. It's just that we have to, I mean, we have to get these guys to verbally say, this is important, because it's just not on the list. It's not a reflection of your agenda. And then, yeah, it's just that we. Anyway, on another front, it looks like there's a lot of that, and more grants to us, somebody who's the staff here tonight. And he wants to move out of the state, but he doesn't want to lose their affordability. And so, well, we're gonna try to buy it from him. He's gonna donate half, the other half is to us. And, is there any money in the housing fund that could go for this kind of thing?
Early right now.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just 4 months.
Yeah.
So I can't think of it because we're also going to do you guys. So I would need to look at all like what the number is.
Yeah.
And then what Charlie's going to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think this is a hard sell because for some reason. But if we should decrease it, I think what. Well, it's possible, but it's. Yeah, yeah. The vendor is gonna require you to keep the lease with the town for a certain amount of years. But we want to just simply say, so if you want your, yeah, that's okay.
Well, I don't know, it's, I've seen it, it might not be. Fire update.
Your idea of buying something.
Yeah. Okay. Keep fighting, you keep going.
The St. Helena City Council for September 22, 2015. Mr. Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
All right. We've come back from a closed session that went just a little longer than anticipated. That's why we're just a little late. So at this point, let me call upon Mr. Brown. Was there any reportable action?
No, Mr. Mayor, the City Council did meet in closed session this afternoon. No reportable action was taken on the items that were discussed consistent with the agenda.
All right. Roll call.
Mayor Galbraith,
Here.
Vice Mayor White,
Here.
Councilmember Kroll,
Here.
Doring,
Here.
Pitts.
Here.
All right. I would like to begin this evening with a moment of silence in memory of Councilmember Joe Potter, who served on the City Council with distinction for 8 years. We were notified yesterday that he had passed away, so I would ask for a moment of silence. All right. Let me begin with the public forum. It's an opportunity for members of the public to address us on matters not on our agenda. The time limit is 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to speak at public forum? Seeing none, we'll go on. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
You didn't honestly think I'd miss this opportunity, did you? Mary Stevenson, representing our town, St. Helena. We'd like to ask once more for the council to agendize a discussion of including employee housing with hotel development that's going to be coming in the future of St. Helena. We have spoken to several of you and also to the Planning Commission on this, but we've been unable to get a public discussion of this issue. We think it's important, and we think it's a matter of timing, because there will be several hotel developments that will come before you in the next 6 months to a year. One developer who I have great respect for and respect for his project brought it to you in a conceptual form a couple of weeks ago, and 4 out of 5 of you made no mention of housing for this 80-room hotel. We think we're sending that as a city government, you're sending the wrong message to developers, and there will be many developers who want to develop hotels in St. Helena, because unless they know that the city will require some negotiations within a development contract for incremental employee housing, you will not have that presented to you. And so far, the public comment you've made indicates that you're not concerned about having employee housing as a part of hotel development. There's a little under 200 rooms in St. Helena now, hotel rooms. I would guess that this council, and maybe a council after you, will probably approve about 200 rooms over the next 5 years, because TOT tax is the most expedient way to get the revenue the city needs. 200 rooms will mean approximately 300 additional employees coming to St. Helena. Most of these will be low-income, low-wage employees. So 300 more people coming into St. Helena every day, because there's no place for them to live now. We've established there's no place for the existing employees to leave, will have a huge impact on our community. So we think the time has come to do this. There are examples of other hotels who have done this well in the valley, and there's examples of hotels who have not done this at all. And it's up to the city to spend the time and the effort to negotiate these contracts, these development agreements. But first, we need the council to have some public discussion to say if you are interested in this. It's difficult. I know that the council is probably worried about not having people asking for a time limit for projects because they're worried about housing. But I just want to say to Bardesano, who did build 24 houses and donated an acre to do that in 2008 at the height of or the depth of the recession, just sold for $88 million, not including land. Hotel developers who are coming to St. Helena need to pay their fair share for employee housing. And we ask that you put this on your agenda in the near future.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak at public comment? All right, I'll close public comment, and we'll go to reports by staff and city council and perhaps future agenda items. Let me begin with you, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, community. I just wanted to thank our firefighters, and I've asked the chief to be here this evening to talk about the Valley Fire. So I wanted to thank them personally for the work that they've done, not only in the Valley Fire recently, but over the past months as we've tackled a lot of fires in Northern California. I sent out an email late last week sort of articulating some of the work that we've done here in St. Helena. We're a very small city, and so for us, response can be challenging. And our employees were deeply concerned and certainly care very deeply for our neighbors. Some of our employees live in the fire areas. We know friends and family who are there. And so all of our employees were deeply connected and tried to do what they could. We have our own city to run, which is always challenging. I did want to share that one of the challenges when you run an emergency, when you have an emergency situation like Calistoga had, one of the challenges is sort of balancing the outreach of support, donations, volunteers, balancing that with knowing that that support is there. And as your city manager, I have experience in responding to a train crash, a small plane crash, fires, rains and mudslides, as well as the Occupy movement that happened a couple of years ago, and a community shooting that we had in Santa Rosa with very emotional community demonstrations. And so my experience in handling those kinds of things, one of the benefits of the collaboration in your area is that people reach out and say that we're here, and that means a lot. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to have people physically arrive. You need to know that that support is there. And that's what the police chief and the fire and myself did over the weekend, is we reached out to the city manager of Calistoga and the police chief of Calistoga and said, we're here for you. If you need us, let us know. And that often means just as much as sending people. And so they knew we were there. They asked for help when they needed it. For example, when they needed some equipment, we were able to respond to that. And so St. Helena citizens should know that we were there, we were supportive, and that Calistoga and the Red Cross knew that we would help if we could and when we were asked. And so I think that's important, and we should be very proud of our firefighters, but also very proud of our own organization, our willingness to help, and our employees who did help when they were called upon. So we're always happy to be there, and I think that we were very supportive during a very difficult time for the folks in the Valley who went through this fire, and also for our colleagues in Calistoga. And so I have asked the fire chief to come and give you some specific details, because I thought you would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sorensen.
All right.
Chief Sorensen.
I just have a brief overview of what the crews are doing out at the fires. Engine 217, which is our brush rig, responded with crew members Tony Leonardini, Ryan Smithers, and Rich Martin out of county with 4 other engines from Napa County to the Butte Fire in Calaveras County. On September 11th, they responded to it, and which destroyed 901 structures and burned over 70,000 acres. Engine 217 was then redispatched to the Valley Fire on 9/14, which they are still assigned on a 2-week commitment. Brush 17, our brush rig, responded initial attack to the Valley Fire with crew members Nick Salakian and Marcos Vargas on Saturday, September 12th, assigned to structure protection on Highway 175, and spent 7 days on the fire, returning the following Saturday, this last Saturday. The Valley Fire burned over 76,000 acres and destroyed over 1,900 structures. Engine 217 will most likely, I already said that, we'll be home this weekend. No injuries have been reported from our crews. The Valley Fire made it to the number 3 most damaging wildland fire in California's history, and 18th most deadliest fire in California. The Butte Fire made it to number 7 most damaging and number 20 on the most deadliest. And both of those could rise if they find more deceased. Both causes are under investigation. And I wanted to thank all the volunteers and citizens who donated time and money to the relief efforts. And if anybody has any questions.
I don't think we have any questions. When it gets to be my turn, I've got a few further comments.
Okay.
But
And
we
I just
certainly are
wanted to
inspired
add
by your efforts.
that our fire department open house is Sunday, October 11th
that's coming up just in a few weeks.
Time moves on.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, do you have any report?
Briefly, wanted to inform the public that in the lawsuit that was brought in the early part of this year, challenging the City Council's approval of the Davies Winery project, a decision was reached in that case entitled Citizens Voice St. Helena, Susan Kenward and Jeff Ellsworth versus City of St. Helena. The Superior Court of Napa County entered its order on September 18 in favor of the City of St. Helena and denying the petition for writ of mandate.
All right. And my understanding is the city will post the decision on the city website, so if those who are interested in reading it can read it. Transparent government. All right, Ms. Black?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I want to talk to you about the ad hoc revenue task force. And I'm looking for 2 council members to submit applications. I'm looking for 1 planning commissioner to submit an application, and I need 4 community members. The mayor is going to be making appointments at the first meeting in October, so I'm just looking for more applications to come into the city clerk's office so we can fill the positions.
All right.
What's
very
the
good.
deadline for
Oh,
that?
I'm sorry, and the deadline is Thursday, October 1st.
All right.
And I do have flyers and applications in the back table.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hausch?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let everyone know that the Planning Commission approved the Parish Life Center project last meeting, which was proposed at the Catholic Church. They're proposing to rebuild that structure. There's a lot of interest from the community, so that project was approved. And tomorrow is the short-term rental town hall meeting here at Vintage Hall from 5 to 7. We welcome everyone who has interest to come out or send written comments. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I actually have a couple things. First of all, I have 2 employees that are leaving at the end of the month, and I wanted to kind of recognize them here publicly and give them my personal gratitude. One is Glenn Wright, who has been with us part-time. He's a retired engineer who's working with me part-time since I came on in August, and we originally thought he was going to stay till like December maybe at the latest, and he's stayed now almost a year, over a year now, and so he's been really instrumental in my success here, and I just wanted to publicly thank him for his help and his assistance. And then the other person is David Hassel, who's been with the city for a number of years, I think going on 16 years right about, in the water department, and he's leaving at the end of the month to go on to bigger and better things. He's going to be sorely missed here at the city. He's been a really important part of the team, and again, really instrumental in the division since I've been here. So thanks to those two folks who've been around and helping out Public Works. And then I have a couple projects I wanted to briefly update everybody on, especially the community in the El Bonita area, El Bonita Avenue. The developer over there of Magnolia Oaks started construction this week on the sewer line. There's an off-site sewer line in El Bonita Avenue. The project's going to install a sewer main and laterals to each house on the area up to the curb. And so folks that live in that area can then pay the annexation fee, pay the connection fee, impact fees, and actually connect to city sewer. So that provides them an option. You know, a lot of those houses are on small lots and they have septic. So that will give an option to instead of upgrading those septic systems, when they kind of maintain them, they connect to city sewer. That hopefully will be wrapping up at the end of the month, end of October. And then also, we'll be starting pretty quick, hopefully soon. I met with a contractor today on the Valley View bike lane project. That's the green bike lanes over by the high school and primary school. I met with them in the field today to mark some stuff out. There are a couple details we're still trying to resolve before they get started, but hopefully we'll see some work on that very soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other staff that wishes to report? No? Okay. Mr. Doring?
I'd like to follow up with Mary Stevenson's comments and asking that we agendize that item at some point. I don't know if there's council consensus on that, to have at least have the discussion about employee housing as it relates to development, and to see, you know, what the consensus of the council is and what the best process is to either give that signal or not give that signal.
Well, any member of the council can agendize an item, and so you've requested, and we will do it. And
Thank you. Then the other The other request arises out of the activities that have happened in St. Helena over the last month with respect to a suspicious person approaching young girls in the community. It's been in the press. There's been a press release. There's been some comment about that. I've been giving some thought to that, and one of the things I've been thinking about is that it would really be good for us as a community to sponsor some kind of a workshop. There's an organization, there are many organizations, but the one I know about that did a workshop a couple of years ago in Yountville, it's called Kid Power, and it basically is a workshop that introduces the concept of safety, prevention of abuse, stranger danger, all of those things that young people, teenagers can really benefit from in our community, so that we as a community are proactive in addressing those issues as they arise from time to time in our small town. I think it would be very beneficial for us to sponsor that with maybe the school district or other schools or whoever else wants to participate. My son actually went to a workshop when he was younger, maybe about 13, and he found it helpful. And I know my daughter would find it helpful, and I know your daughters and sons would find it helpful. I think it would be very good. And of course, it's a budgetary item. I have no idea. I don't think it's that expensive. They can tailor it to the needs of our community. So I would like to have something like that on a future agenda to at least pursue.
All right, maybe we can ask the city manager to talk it over with the superintendent of schools and see what might be the best way to think about this issue. Very important issue. Mr. White? Mr. Bitts? Ms. Crowell?
I just wanted to let the public know that annually there is a household hazardous waste collection day at the Calistoga Fairgrounds that was going to be held October 9th and 10th. It's not going to be held those dates now because of the Valley Fire situation, but it will be either later in October or early November. I'll let you know.
Okay. I said I was going to comment briefly on the fire. This is the 10th day of the fire. I checked the CAL FIRE website today. It's burned 76,067 acres. That's a very large area. It's taken 1,238 homes. That's a very large number. It is 75% contained. That's the good news. It was, and to some extent remains, an extraordinary event. To me, the swiftness with which the fire initially spread was horrific. And for us, it's a lesson to be remembered. We are extremely fortunate that that fire did not get to Angwin. Very fortunate. I must say, in keeping with what the city manager said, when the fire broke out, I called Mayor Canning of Calistoga and offered whatever help we could. And as she said, I think it's important to make offers of help. Last Friday, Mayor Canning gave both Mayor Dunbar of Yountville and myself a tour of the encampment at the Calistoga Fairgrounds. At that point in time, there were 1,000 folks from Lake County living there. We started with the Emergency Operations Center, and I must say it was a remarkable coordination of governmental and non-governmental providers of assistance. Absolutely remarkable. Also, I was impressed myself with the importance of the assistance provided by Napa County. It included public health services, it included accounting services, and it also included the Sheriff's Department, all on the scene. The quantity of in-kind donations that went to the fairground was staggering. And when you toured the encampment, there were constant expressions of gratitude by the folks that were involuntarily relocated there. As for St. Helena, we're all inspired by our first-line responders. And I want to shout out to people in our community, our wonderful citizens, that provide both in-kind and monetary contributions. It was significant and deeply appreciated. One other matter, Caltrans work. Last September 15th, the city manager, the public works director, and I attended a meeting with Caltrans dealing with its further work. It's shut down work until October 15th. for the harvest. The remaining road work is north of Stice Lane to Charter Oak. It's basically a repeat of what's been done south of Stice Lane, and then there will be further final resurfacing. The anticipated completion date, assuming weather doesn't really hold them up too much, is, as I understood it, the summer of 2016. But what's important here is that Caltrans is in charge of the remaining work. They do not contemplate any further daytime closures. The majority of their work will be done at night. To the extent that there's day work, 2 lanes will be open. In other words, traffic can move in both directions. And then as I further understood it, they said that the traffic signal at Grayson would be done by the spring of 2016. Now, Mr. Palmer, if I got any of that wrong, please correct me. That sounds good. All right. With that, our next item on the agenda is presentation of public recognitions. And we have a presentation by the Chamber of Commerce, charging to the podium.
We recognize you.
All right, we're going to be technical tonight. Sorry, I gotta put this here. Get ready. There's no music to this.
Well,
I promise. I'm not going to sing. I promise. Don't know where that came from. Okay. Thank you. Pam Simpson, representing the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here tonight at the request of the council. Before I do anything, what I wanted to do is have everybody in the room who's a chamber member, former board member, current board member, anybody who's been a part of the chamber, just raise your hand so they can see those people who are in the audience who've been supportive of our efforts. So, again, I'm here tonight at the request of the council. This year, for the first time, the city and the chamber entered into an actual contract for destination marketing services, and the investment by the city was more impactful than it has been in the years past. By making bigger investment in the chamber, the council has taken an important first step in following through on their strategic goal of increasing the city's revenue and the economic vitality. We know that our city's budget is directly tied to how well business performs. Thus, investing in our businesses is the right move towards sustainability. It is our responsibility to lay out the plan of how that money will be used and how we will measure and report our results. We appreciate the opportunity to outline the plan, the process, and the anticipated outcomes tonight. First of all, I think it's important that we note that the chamber, the business community, like the council and our residents, we believe in St. Helena. We believe that our town is the best in the valley, and that we have something special here. We also believe we can share our city with people who enjoy the lifestyle we've built, have experiences that will make memories, and make them want to return time and time again. We believe we can do this in a low impact way to the residents and a high return to the city. We believe telling the right stories is the best way to connect the St. Helena where we live with the St. Helena in which we market. How we tell the story or deliver our message is very crucial. We know that St. Helena's authentic small town charm is what stands out over other destinations in the valley. St. Helena's brand is unique and powerful, and the message resonates with visitors who want that small town, personalized and intimate experience. The only way to truly sell St. Helena is to be truthful in telling its story. With new funding available, we're able to build our efforts and reach more prospective visitors, which is critical to driving heads to beds and shoppers to Main Street. Not only has the city contracted with the Chamber to market St. Helena, investment comes from our businesses, the St. Helena's TID, or Tourist Improvement District, and to visit Napa Valley. Combining these funding sources into one marketing budget is bringing us into parity with our competitors in the valley, those who are investing heavily in their destinations. Across the country, like in St. Helena, DMOs, or destination marketing organizations, are needed because a majority of tourism businesses are small family-owned ventures employing less than 10 people. They simply don't have the resources to market directly, and channeling efforts collectively is more effective. The Chamber serves as the impartial coordinator to pool designation resources in order to create a bigger collective impact in the market. Oops, gotta go back. Sorry about that. Regardless of funding levels, marketing efforts should always be targeted to the right audience and based on travel trends, areas of focus, and successful tools to accomplish our goals. To begin, we look at the Chamber's strategic goals and metrics by which we'll be monitoring. You can see that we will concentrate on 3 main business designations, the sectors to complete the plan, and we have identified factors that will measure our success. The benchmark for TOT is ADR, or average daily rate, and occupancy. The TID monitors these factors and analyzes where we are. While these benchmarks are a good start, again, forces other than marketing will influence numbers to cause TOT to fluctuate. For example, this was the first year short-term rentals paid into the TOT. This resulted in an overall 8% increase in TOT, mainly due to the income for these short-term rentals. Next year, we hope to have our new hotel open and producing TOT by late summer, which will again influence the numbers. To see if our marketing efforts are working for retail, for tasting rooms and restaurants, we'll monitor sales tax in the long run and in the short term by surveying businesses for their input. While we have good information from the city's CAFR, we would like to see more from Muni Services and are working with the city's finance director to break down the numbers. We feel that the sales tax analysis will not only help our efforts, but also during your budgeting and maybe for the ad hoc revenue committee that you're talking about. Anecdotal surveys are important to gauge our efforts in the short term, and we survey businesses frequently. This is a survey from April, before the channelization project was in full swing, and after a very healthy spring. We'll be doing our next survey in November to see how businesses fared during the tourism season. That said, we need to keep in mind that our results aren't influenced solely by marketing efforts. External factors like the economy and promotional activities of other destinations, the changing focus of journalists and bloggers can always impact the outcomes. The channelization project, residual media from the California fires, possible El Nino have all the potential to have an effect on the number of visitors we see each year. Our survey in August showed that most respondents on Main Street reported up to a 30% decrease in sales. The Chamber's contractual relationship with the city should be tracked and measured by our successful completion of specific and detailed deliverables. Among them, our new website redesign, and a responsive mobile site, and our new interactive destination map. All items we have included in our annual sales and marketing plan, which is the blueprint for our city contract. As we drill down into what we do, it's important to know who we're talking to and where their interests lie. Visit Napa Valley does a lot of our work for us here. We know from their visitor profile that our core visitors are upper middle class, that they like staying and visiting nice places, and the culinary experiences are a huge draw. From our own analytics, we know that our audience follows the Visit Napa Valley targeted demographic. For broader trends in travel, we also look at Visit California information to see how we should develop our plan. From this, we can see that mobile friendly and social media is the #1 takeaway and probably the best use of our marketing dollars. Taking into consideration the goals, the metrics, the trends, the audience, we build our plan and focus our events on these efforts on these strategies. The goal of this year's PR effort is to ensure our story is told in a way that will capture the attention of visitors and to the Napa Valley and choose our town as the premier destination. We have a very strong collaborative PR committee who work with us to ensure a consistent message about St. Helena is being delivered. The committee is made up of PR professionals that work for our St. Helena area businesses. Their efforts exponentially expand our contract PR's firm's reach and is instrumental in gaining St. Helena's national recognition. And I actually brought 2 tonight that were out today, Oakland Magazine and another one that was GEV, Gastronomique, on Vogue, both specifically about St. Helena, mentioning over 10 or 15 St. Helena businesses. So I've got copies of those, but another great another great press day for St. Helena. Our monthly PR report will include metrics such as circulation, social shares, and ad value equivalency. We're hoping to do a destination video in the coming probably 2 years. The video will create an that we create will be interactive, beautiful, and will have a great reach. However, this is also the biggest, most complex item on our list. It will take the most time and money, so its completion is not a deliverable for this year. However, we need to keep it on the list as a priority and an investment, and possibly start the creative outline this year. Our advertising plan is twofold: digital ads that entice the visitor to click through to a specific offer or a call to action, and print guides that are targeted to our specific demographic. Digital advertising is the bulk of our budget because here we can see the best results and the highest return. With limited resources, we focus digital ads on visitors who are planning a trip within the next 3 to 4 months. Our digital campaigns are seen on relevant websites that both retargeting and targeted lookalike campaign strategies. Digital advertising gives us the ability to change out a campaign depending on what is resonating with people. We know digital ads work when we achieve click-throughs and conversions, like buying tickets to Restaurant Roulette and buying the passport. Tracking impressions is another element of a successful campaign. Still in its infancy for metric deliverables, social media is the #1 trend and has the best value for our dollar. We believe we're making strides in various outlets. Social media campaigns focus on engagement that will translate shares and comments, retweets and mentions. Increasing our audience of likes and followers enables us to reach a larger target audience with our content both organically and through paid campaigns. The goal here is to raise brand awareness, increase the reach of our audience, collect emails, and drive more traffic to the website. Email marketing is still extremely valuable, and we have a plan to capture emails and text numbers from people who have already expressed an interest in St. Helena through our ads, through our campaigns, and through their experiences here. These are our loyalty customers. Our goal is to increase our data capture by 150% over last year. Working with our partners allows us to leverage efforts. Our newest effort, an interactive map, is a partnership with Visiting Media and gives destination businesses the opportunity to showcase their properties with a 360 virtual tour, customized shopping carts, videos, and special offers within their own profile. Our partnership with Visit Napa Valley is promoting our interactive map on their site, encouraging businesses to join. The value to the business is they can now add content, referrals, and recommendations, and that can instantly be shared with their network, such as welcome centers, concierges, retail staffs, and customers. The goal is to engage travelers through rich content, enhance the guest experience, and offer partners a valuable tool to increase visitors and event bookings. Our website redesign is due out in the fall. This is a hint tonight of a site that we are going to have be visually aspirational, and it speaks to our brand. The site will entice visitors to stay on the page, interact with our map, and eventually click through to our business sites. We are launching a blog this year to see this tool as a way to engage our visitors by telling our stories. SEO will be increased by our blog, by our backlink program, and by launching our responsive mobile site. The goal is to increase traffic, to engage travelers through rich content, and increase SEO, which we will use for all our campaigns to drive the message home. We are confident that our strategic goals, our benchmarks, and our metrics will show a steady improvement for St. Helena. We recognize that when business thrives, St. Helena thrives, and that marketing is a vital piece of that overall economic development. We have invested in qualified staff. We have a vote of confidence from the St. Helena TID and Visit Napa Valley, and we know that with the continued collaboration and involvement with the St. Helena business community, we can spend wisely the money invested in this effort. Thank you.
Pam, you should
Thank you.
check
Thank
out
you very much.
this month's Sunset. There's some great mentions of San Helena businesses and
Just
restaurants
came
as well.
today.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
All right.
That was part of our effort.
Are there any short questions from council? If that's allowed.
I don't have any questions, but I think it was a great presentation. I think it's going to be very helpful for the chamber to be able to measure and claim your due next year. It would be nice to start thinking about what kind of a format you will present those results next year that's easy for the council to understand. I know that might be difficult to do, sort of maybe 2 pages go, these are all the metrics and this is where we are. And there was some discussion last time that this would be used sort of against you, and I really never had that intent. I think it is used to inspire you and to energize the chamber, which I think is doing a great job. The presentation's good, so good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we didn't take it any, this is something that the chamber does, regardless of being asked. This was presented to our marketing committee and reviewed by our board, not exactly in this form, but something we normally do. I've got a lot of businesses to answer to who give us money, so something that is not necessarily just done for you tonight. But thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Any other council comment at all? I would just reiterate what Councilmember Doring said, which is that underscore the importance of sort of hardline metrics, if I can put it that way, particularly occupancy rate in our hotels, particularly impact on sales tax and how you quantify it and what the business segments are, and looking at it over some period of time. In other words, looking at it over 3 years or 5 years, whatever makes sense, so that we can really see whether the city's contribution, at least in part, is helping along our businesses.
Right, and very true. I think I pointed out that there's going to be a lot of external factors, and it takes a lot of effort to move TOT. That's why the short-term things are there, but in the long term, absolutely. It's the way to really know whether we're working or not.
And I did notice that word snow, but what I understood, thinking about it, was that lack of snow in the Sierra was a positive
It's
for us
good
here
for
in St.
us.
Helena.
Exactly.
All
If
right.
there's snow this year, that's not going to be the healthy economy that we saw this year. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Next is our consent calendar. And again, any member of the public, as well as any member of the council, can remove an item from the consent calendar, in which case we'll go through the normal process. We have 4 matters on the consent calendar. I'll read them off. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution accepting the work and directing the filing of the notice of completion for the St. Helena Library HVAC-CIP number C-62 project. That's item 9. Item 10, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving a budget adjustment increasing the fiscal year 2015-2016 Public Works Administration budget by $55,203 to fund an existing contract for performance monitoring and reporting for the St. Helena Flood Control Project by Waterways Consulting, Inc. You want to pull that one? 10. All right. 11, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution awarding the construction contract for Bell Canyon Reservoir, install new frame and sluice gate on water intake tower CIP project W-84 in the amount of $87,745 to DRS Marine, Inc. Authorize the Director of Public Works to approve the change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract amount and increase the project budget by $22,000 from Water Enterprise Utility Funds. 12, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution awarding the construction contract for Charter Oak Avenue and Highway 29 sewer repair to G.D. Nielsen Construction, Inc. in the amount of $308,458. Authorize the Director of Public Works to approve change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract amount and create capital improvement project S-68 with $36,454.17 from Water Enterprise Utility Funds and $352,632.63 from Wastewater Enterprise Utility Funds. All right. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent items 9, 11, and 12.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Pitts,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Doreen,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. And that takes us back to item 10. And Mr. Palmer, that's your item.
So, just briefly, I'll kind of restate what's in the staff report. I mean, the city has an existing agreement with Waterways Consulting to provide mitigation, monitoring, and reporting on the flood project. This was a requirement of the permits with the resource agencies such as the Corps and the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so this agreement was executed with a 10-year period, and it established a 10-year scope of work and a 10-year budget amount. As it states in the staff report, there are currently no Measure A funds available for this agreement, which is how it was originally executed and a purchase order was issued with Measure A funds. So we're asking this budget adjustment to pay for the project the contract out of the general fund. So it's not a new contract, the existing contract. We're currently in year 5 of their requirements of their work, and so they will continue on for 5 more years.
All right. Ms. Bennett, you had a question?
I'm Bobby Monette. I'm speaking as a citizen. Yeah, I read these things, and if they don't make sense, I would just like to have them make sense. I have a couple of questions. The original amount, it says in the agreement that there was a maximum amount of $360 or something over $300,000 that was going to be paid for these services. And when I looked at it, it looked like I think $217,000 has already been used, and so that's over half. And so I was trying to, and then if the 53 goes this year, there will be just about that much left for the rest of the 5 years. So. Or the 4 years remaining. So I just didn't understand, first of all, there's a difference between a contract and an agreement, and if we need to meet this agreement in terms of the maximum, the cap on the amount spent, or if we can expand that, or if we can decrease the number of years that have to happen, because it just didn't look like there was enough money left. And I may be looking at it all crazy. I couldn't read the spreadsheet, and it was so tiny, the print was so tiny, I couldn't read the budget part of it. So I guess I'm just asking for some clarification so it can make sense to me.
All right. Anybody else have a public comment here? I'll close the public hearing, and Mr. Palmer, you can respond.
Absolutely. So I think the question mainly has to do with how we're budgeting for this and where we're at year 5, and it looks like we're going beyond halfway. So a lot of the stuff is front loaded. The chart that's hard to read in there on the scope shows a lot of activities occurring in years 1 through 4. And so those years, the cost for those first 4 years average is a lot higher than annual costs moving forward. And it has to do with making sure the plants and the other improvements that are put in the logs and such are actually working, and they're getting established. And so once you get through that first couple of 3 or 4 years of intensive work, you can kind of spool back the amount of monitoring required to make sure that the plants are still thriving. And then the other part of it is the $55,000 actually covers 2 calendar years, because the contract the scope is based on calendar years, and we're doing fiscal year budgeting, so that we have to split the calendar year budget, which is often difficult timing-wise with when they're going to do their monitoring and stuff. So the $55,000 actually covers years 5 and 6, and then that so 7, 8, 9, 10 are the remaining years. And actually, I think year 8 looks like there might even be really reduced level of work in year 8. So as we get to the out years, the level of effort is going to greatly reduce. We will stay within the 327, whatever the number is. Yeah.
All right.
So one question: this group is bound to keep doing these activities, even if at the end of year 7 we've paid them the full 327. How do we keep them around so that we're not in violation with respect to our 10-year requirement with Army Corps and other agencies?
Right,
and enforcing the contract.
That's what we have to do. It's incumbent upon us to enforce the contract and track their work and make sure that they're doing the work required by the permits and make sure they're working within their budget. That's part
Do we
of
have
our
any
staff
opportunity
job.
to go back and try to spread that 110 over 5 years evenly to further incentivize them?
I mean, not without an amendment to the agreement.
Which they'd have to agree to.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe I have one quick question. Maybe it's more financial in nature, but it says here there are currently no Measure A funds available for this agreement, but if Measure A funds become available, can the cost be back charged to Measure A?
Yes, I believe it can be.
Okay. All right.
I
with
just
that-
think, just on this, for future reference, I think some of these questions could be answered. This chart is not something that we should be putting out. It's just too small, frankly. I mean, I could barely read it. Some of the answers that you gave were in the chart. I don't know if that's because that's how it came out in the contract, but that for the future would be good to have something that's a larger font.
Tried to squeeze too much information on one page. That's what it is. All right. At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent item number 11.
So moved.
Second.
Cindy? Ms.
Item
Black?
10.
Was it item 10?
Item 10.
Item 10. Sorry about that. Item 10.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. That takes us to new business. Number 13, consideration and proposed approval of a letter of support for $1.5 million grant application to California Wildlife Conservation Board's Proposition 1 Stream Flow Enhancement Grant, dealing with what I always characterize as that damn dam.
Right. Good
Ms.
evening, Mayor.
Prokowski.
Thank
Yes.
you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to request your approval of a letter of support for the city's grant application to the California Wildlife Conservation Board in the amount of $1.5 million for the Upper York Creek Dam Removal and Ecosystem Restoration Project. In November 2014, California voters approved $7.5 billion in bonds for various water projects statewide, including this stream enhancement grant. In this first cycle, $38 million is competitively available with no matching funds required. However, since this is a nearly $6.5 million project, the city will be contributing heavily toward the project through its own water bonds as well as other grant awards. As you all know, the Upper York Creek Dam Removal and Ecosystem Restoration Project will modify the upper dam by cutting a 23-foot notch into the earthen structure to permit fish passage and habitat connectivity by providing access to 1.5 miles of prime spawning and rearing habitat for the threatened California Central Coast steelhead and other aquatic and riparian species. It will also restore the natural sediment flow to Lower York Creek and the Napo River, which have been sediment-starved over the past 115 years. The restoration will repair approximately 3 acres of degraded habitat, which will be revegetated with a palette of multi-story native plants to provide a diverse habitat for aquatic, riparian, and terrestrial species. The city will be notified of any grant award in spring 2016. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any initial questions by council? Let me.
This is a good thing, right?
Is there any? And let me open the public hearing. Is there any public comment? I don't see any. No, my understanding, and the city manager can confirm if I'm right about this, that if we get this grant, that closes the funding gap with respect to this project, and as was detailed in the Water and Sewer Infrastructure Subcommittee report back in June of 2010, our history with this project goes back to, and I can't even remember now, but about 1996, I think it was, when we were first ordered to remove this dam. It's been a long saga. So to see the end of it is thrilling as far as I'm concerned, and we're all hopeful you get the grant. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve item 13.
Move approval.
Second.
All right.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. That takes us to item 14.
Mr. Mayor, I've got to, because I've worked on this project in the past, I've got to recuse myself from this, so I'm going to leave, I
Oh,
guess,
okay.
and probably not come back, because I think it's our last item.
All right. Well, we're glad you got through your LAFCO meeting so expeditiously.
Yes, likewise. Have a good evening.
Okay, good. Councilmember Pitts is our representative, Up Valley representative to LAFCO, which is the Local Area Formation Commission, and it had a meeting this late afternoon, and it was dealing with the Napa Pike project, but apparently it got through it in record time, so there we are. All right, number 14, consideration of proposed resolution designating a no parking zone along the east side of Main Street adjacent to 1820, 1830, 1846, 1856, 1862, and 1872 Main Street as previously approved with the Las Alcabas Hotel project and required by the Mitigated Negative Declaration Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program for the Las Alcabas Hotel project, accepting an addendum to the initial study / Mitigated Negative Declaration. Mr. Palmer, I see your lead staff on this item. And by the way, we did receive a couple of emails, one from Shannon Coletto and one from Brad Mills, and they should be made part of the record. Please, Mr. Palmer.
Yes, thank you. I have a few slides here to help walk me through this. Not sure. There we go. Okay. So just as background, in August of 2010, the City Council did adopt a negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for, at that time, the Grandview Hotel project, which is now being referred to as Las Alcabas. That project description included a new northbound left turn lane from Main Street, and it also included a no parking zone along Main Street south of Pratt Avenue. And put on the slide here, I guess you can read. This is page 30 from the initial study of environmental significance that was adopted in 2010 by the City Council, and it does reference there that on-street parking would be lost along both sides of Main Street from the intersection of Pratt Avenue, approximately 250 feet south of the project site, as a result of the left turn lane. And then the next slide, again by way of background, is from the resolution that adopted that mitigated negative declaration from 2010, from recital 2, again specifically mentioning that the installation of the left turn lane will eliminate parking along Main Street. I'm trying to find exact phrasing. It's approximately 20 curbside parking spaces on Main Street will be eliminated south of the intersection of Pratt Avenue to accommodate in the left turn lane. So the point of this was just to give the council some background and show that it was contemplated when the project was approved that this would be a consequence and a needed improvement associated with the left-hand turn lane. This is an aerial photo just highlighted in red where the left turn lane is. It does affect 6 residents on Main Street south of Pratt Avenue. And where we're at now in the project is the developer is working to obtain their encroachment permit from Caltrans to do this work within the right-of-way, along with their water tie-in work in the right-of-way of Main Street. A council resolution is required to install the no parking zone marking. So even though it was included in the project description, Public Works Director doesn't have the authority to go out and paint the curbs without a resolution from City Council. And Caltrans recognized this and is requiring this resolution by the council prior to issuing an encroachment permit for the project to the developer. So staff went ahead and trying to be transparent and open and good partners and neighbors to all the residents. We did notify all the residents on the street that are affected by the parking. We got responses from people representing, I believe it's 5 of the 6 properties. 3 responses regarding 4 of the properties opposed the no parking zone. We did get 1 response supporting the no parking zone from one of the 6 residents. The proposed design, this is going to be a little difficult to read on the screen, but the proposed design is shown here. It is a design that utilizes the shortest turn lane design that still meets the minimum engineering criteria. Staff did have the developer's engineer study an alternative alignment that would shift the turn pocket more to the west, thereby allowing the parking area to remain on the east side of the highway and instead eliminate parking on the west side of the highway. This alternative is shown on this slide. And what happens with this is, in order to install the northbound turn pocket at Pratt, we have to move the existing southbound left turn pocket in order to keep people from running into each other head on, right? So that both turn pockets have to shift. And once we start modifying that southbound turn pocket, Caltrans design criteria state we have to bring it up to current standards. We have to start analyzing that turn pocket. We can't just put it back the way it is. We have to make sure that we're not making the situation worse by putting back in a turn pocket that's too small and doesn't meet design standards. So this alternative shows what it would look like if we put it back in, the southbound left turn pocket, back in with the current design standards. And what happens is we end up shifting travel lanes more to the west as we approach the bridge. So there's the bridge there at York Creek as a constraint. And you can't really see it on this very well, but it does start impacting the bridge width, and it starts impacting the Behringer driveway exit, and it starts impacting 2 elm trees at the end of the tunnel of trees there. So staff's recommendation is to implement the original design as considered by the 2010 approval and adopt the resolution designating the parking zone. Now, this action and the staff report also includes acceptance of an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared September 11, 2015, which provided additional supplemental and clarifying information. It did not, however, notice any new impacts, so it's strictly supplemental information to clarify the original mitigated negative declaration.
All right. Any initial questions of staff? Let me open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to comment at public hearing?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Guneet Bajwal, Hasal Kobus Hotel. I hate to correct Pam Simpson, but we're looking to open late spring, not late summer, next year. Just give me a little bit. No, summerish, late springish, late springish.
Did you state your name for the record?
Yes, I did. Oh, Guneet Bajwal, Hasal Kobus Hotel.
Okay, good.
Sorry. Just if you will indulge me for a second. On October 1, speaking of the power and of the brand St. Helena, we are having 35 members of the media from Vogue, Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast Magazine, coming for a hot air tour of the property, walking through St. Helena downtown, going to Behringer's CIA. They're coming from UK, from France, from China, from India. So we are very excited. It'll be our first showcasing the property. As a hot, it's still a construction zone, obviously, but it'll be a fun event. We've been working, coming back to the parking, we've been working on this project for a long time, and we've been working on this left turn lane for the last couple of years. I wanted to introduce our engineer, Jeremy Sills. He's here to talk about, some of the technical details, why this is the best alternative. So if I can have Jeremy.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Jeremy Sill, RSA Plus Civil Engineers, formerly Riker Spence and Associates. A few things. Maybe you can skip back to the original design there, Steve. So the original design, as you're heading southbound, the left turn pocket that turns onto Pratt heading east, it's shifted all the way to the east. So logically, if you're designing the other side of the intersection, you're trying to match that side of the intersection. So the turn pocket and everything else was shifted the same direction. So right now, north of Pratt, nothing is even touched because it aligns correctly. So that was just the first, thinking about it from a planning perspective, is what makes the most sense. Secondly, as Steve stated really well, was if you decided to go further and move it all to the west, you do have impacts to the Behringer driveway. You have impacts to the sidewalk on the bridge for ADA, and there's not a way to really walk across because that sidewalk will have to go. It'll be in the travel lane. And then kind of one that wasn't mentioned was the parking that's going away. I can only imagine coming out of those driveways. If you're driving out of the driveway, there's cars parked on both sides. The site visibility has to be challenging. I know I live on a street in Napa we have cars parked on both sides, and as I come out of the driveway, it's very challenging. You have to kind of creep out into the travel lane to see. So this would help alleviate some of that, even though you are losing the parking for the residents there. But as far as safety standpoint, maybe better visibility coming out of those driveways. So there's a few key points I wanted to mention off the bat onto what made our reasoning for placing the lane as it is.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. I was reviewing your plan, and then I was comparing it to the report by Crane. And in their report, they seem to be basing their report on a 50-foot turning lane, and you designed a 150-foot long lane. I was wondering, what is the requirement and why the difference, and if there was a 50-foot requirement, would that lessen the impact of losing parking?
Yeah, good question. So the traffic report you're talking about is talking about the queuing. How many cars stack up there at the peak moment? So 50 feet, which is each car counts as 25 feet, so it'd be 2 cars would be stacked up. If you read the report, it doesn't mention the deceleration length. So if cars are stacked up there, that's how much length you need for cars to wait. But as if a third car's entering, you need more room to slow down. You can't just stop on 50 feet. So that that turn pocket is lengthened to allow for deceleration of cars as you're entering and turning left into the site.
What is the actual requirement by Caltrans?
It's actually longer than that. I think it's actually 205 feet. Is that right?
Right. So Jeremy and I had a discussion about this the other day. Yeah, the report, so the couple of clarifying things on that. The report actually, although it says 50 feet, they think would be adequate. They recommend 75. So that's one thing I just want to clarify. And then when Jeremy and I are going through the numbers, if you add up the queue length for those cars, 75 feet, plus the decel length, plus the bay taper requirement to taper back, take that lane from the full 12 feet back down to the center, it's another 60 feet. It ends up being 275 feet that's required. And in this case, we're actually shrinking that down to 205 to try and accommodate the physical constraints, because there's another intersection just down the way at Madrona, right? Is that the right? I think that's the right name. Elmhurst, right, Elmhurst. So there's another intersection that's very close, so they've shrunken the length just a little bit, but still within what engineering judgment would say is acceptable.
I have a sort of a human nature question.
Let me see if there's any more public comment.
I would like to have my question answered.
Okay, go ahead.
All those cars that are now parking on the east side, I guess the question is, where are they going to park after that parking is eliminated? And I guess one answer could be that they're going to park, if they can find parking, on their own properties, or they're going to park across the street and probably walk to their homes if their cars are going to be parked there for a day or two. And frankly, that worries me as someone who turns from Elmhurst onto Main Street every day. That is already a hazard in my view, because of the curving from the tree tunnel to Elmhurst. If you're eliminating the parking on one side and potentially creating more parking on the other side, would you not be creating a hazard where there isn't one today? And I don't know if you thought about that, but it does concern me, and I have somewhat experienced that myself many times.
So, I'm not familiar with each residence and how much parking they have in their garage or their driveway. So,
and I don't either.
I don't know the answer. Maybe they will, but I'm assuming some can park in their driveway, and maybe guests have to cross the street. I don't really know, so it's hard to answer that question without knowing much about the properties.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So I guess my question is, and I have a similar concern as Paul does, because I also use that intersection regularly. It seems to me that I heard Steve's explanation, but I feel like I've seen intersections where the south and the northbound turn lanes don't necessarily jive. Why is it exactly that we couldn't shift it over and have no parking on the west side of the street and continue to allow parking on the east side of the street? Is it just simply because it will not match up with the existing? What is that a Caltrans requirement that we would have to change that, or could it be grandfathered in since it was existing like that? I understand the fear that people are going to hit each other, but everybody is stopped there to make that turn. So I guess that doesn't concern me as much as more parking on the west side of the street and also the impact on the neighbors.
Yeah, I want to start, and then I'll let Jeremy talk more about the technical issues of the offset. But as a practical manner, it's not necessarily, it's not the two opposing left turns, it's the through traffic. If you're shifting one lane, if you've got the left turn pocket shifted too far, it's the through people that you have to make sure are not lined up with that opposing left turn lane. That's the problem, is that you've got to make sure that the through people are not headed right at somebody. And then, I don't know, Jeremy can talk about how much offset is allowed in an intersection by Caltrans standards, if you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but I guess to kind of answer your question even further, so the question is, what impacts, so if we decided to shift it over, what are the impacts on the surrounding area? I mean, I think it's...
Or why couldn't we do it that way?
So we're talking about keeping the north side of Pratt as it is, and we're talking about that, or we're talking about shifting everything over together?
I'm just talking about allowing the neighbors to be able to continue to park in front of their house and maybe prohibit parking on the west side of the street. There's one home, very large home, two houses, very large, and there's really hardly ever, until recently with the construction, cars parked there. On the other hand, on the other side, there's regularly cars parked there because the neighbors park there. So I'm trying to find a compromise solution, because one thing that troubles me is in this recital, it does say approximately 20 curbside parking spaces on Main Street will be eliminated south of the intersection at Pratt to accommodate the new left-hand lane, but it doesn't say whether it's going to be on the west or the east side. So in the recital. So it does not specify that. And that's what's troubling me, because obviously this is a big issue with the neighborhood. I'm just wondering if there's some compromise that we can reach where we can still have this left-hand turn lane, but preserve the parking on the east side and eliminate it on the west side.
I wish there was. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, but it just seems like in this day and age we should be able to figure something like that out.
Well, I mean, you have a curb-to-curb width at this point, right? So you have lane widths that are standard, and so you're left with shortage on one side or the other. So, and if you decided you wanted to push it to the west, there's impacts to the north that could be severe. You could have to the bridge, the sidewalk in the bridge, the Behringer driveway. You run into a lot of other impacts that.
We can't curve we can't somehow have some sort of, I don't know, barrier in the road right there that would indicate for the car. I see what Steve was saying. I hear what Steve was saying about the through traffic not hitting the people that are turning left, that are waiting to turn left. But is there some way that we could have some sort of demarcation of is there some traffic demarcation that we could have there that would indicate a lane shift? I mean, maybe this is outside of your scope. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just try and kind of summarize maybe a little bit. I think, what we're saying is the engineers looked at the alternative, and the alternative was presented
right. The alternative doesn't seem that feasible either.
Right, and it's not feasible. So short of that, if there's something in between, we don't, as engineers, we can't come up with anything.
Nothing that's even Caltrans. I mean, it'd be really off their standard, and it would be really hard to pass muster through Caltrans. If you try to do some very unique idea, it would be very challenging. Probably wouldn't go anywhere with Caltrans.
How about a roundabout there?
Yeah, those are big and require lots of right of way.
Right. What I hear Jeremy saying is that we're dealing with Caltrans requirements and trying to find a way to meet those along with our good engineering judgment, and it's just tough to make anything. We can't find anything in between that we think will pass muster with Caltrans or engineering judgment. So we the applicant and is presenting what we believe is the only solution that works from an engineering point of view.
Okay, any further questions? All right, let me see if there's any further public comment.
Hello, Mayor and council members. My name is Bob Marshall, and my family has property on 1846 and 1856 Main Street. Just to give you a little background on myself, I'm usually on your side of the table. I've been a planning commissioner for 30 years in San Bruno, California. My father was the mayor of San Bruno for 12 years, so I know what you're going through. So if I made some phone calls, I apologize. That weren't too pleasant. To give a little family background on us in St. Helena, my parents bought the property a little over 30 years ago and have spent at least 3 to 4 days a week since they bought it. My 2 nephews, or a nephew, a niece, and a cousin all got married on our property in St. Helena. personally, 30 years ago, I spent my honeymoon here in St. Helena, and last week I spent my 30th anniversary here in St. Helena. So although we keep San Bruno as our mailing address, St. Helena is still our home. I'd like to address a couple of those comments that were made right now. If you look at the traffic going north and south, right now they do not collide with each other. We're not asking to move anything on the northern traffic. I'm not an engineer, but I've dealt with Caltrans for the last 20 years, and you can work with Caltrans. They do have limitations, but they are workable. They're not easy to work with. Us as the public is almost impossible, but as a city it is possible. A couple of the safety issues that we're worried about, in our property, which we have about 100 foot of frontage with a large lawn area, when we have family gatherings, we use the front very often with children and bocce ball. You've probably seen at Halloween parties and stuff. And if those cars are not parked there, there is no barrier from cars going 50 miles an hour. In the past 4 years, I believe, we've had 2 vehicles on our driveway, one a UPS driver and one a drunk driver. If we had parties there with no parked cars, we'd probably have fatalities. Another main concern is, our engineer here said, backing out into the street, it would be difficult the way it is. It's very safe the way it is because we have 10 feet of buffer before my mother, who backs out of her driveway when she's up here every day. She has 10 feet to look at traffic before she has cars going 50 miles an hour to a possible injury. There are many alternatives, I think, and I asked the staff to address some of them. One was the west side, which we're talking about now. Another one is to move it to the whole thing to the north side of Pratt. We asked if possibly the hotel can move their driveway to the north side, which was on the staff report, which I found out was a mistake, that the hotel was looking into moving the driveway to the north side. And so if you do a left turn both ways, like you do on the southern part of St. Helena, and a couple of the hotels like the Harvest Inn, they have the turn lane where you can go both ways, left into one east and left into west. If we do that between Pratt and the north side of the development, I think that would work. Again, I'm not an engineer. Do I have a few more seconds here?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Okay, I mentioned about the staff, a couple of mistakes. First, before I mention about the staff and mistakes, I want to thank the staff because I called over. We were just notified about this last week, or 3 weeks ago before the meeting last week, and I've contacted Steve and Noah and the city manager and the city clerk and a few other people, and your staff got back to me very promptly and very efficiently, and I deal with a lot of cities, and we don't see that a lot, so I do appreciate that. Another thing on the report, you guys were asking about how long the proposed turn bay will be. The Caltrain, I was told, has a requirement of 275 feet. The design only shows 205 feet. So if they require 275, how can we have a design of 205? And then the report shows 350 feet of red zone. So we have 3 numbers that are completely out of line there. What else would I have here? The value of our properties. I know that's not a major concern, nor should it be of the city council, but we bought our home. No one is on the highway, no one's on a busy street, but thinking we'd have places to park. Yeah, the diminution of value. I'm in the real estate business. I've talked to a couple of realtors up here. It could probably be $100,000 to $200,000 of value of each of our properties. And to correct the staff again on the letters opposed, I received them all. The one that is for the turn lane is not on Main Street. It's on Pratt, around the corner on Pratt. So they will not be affected by the red zone. A couple other quick questions. If we do have a red zone, we have a gardener that comes once a month for about 2 to 3 hours a day. If you've seen our property, most of you have driven by it, we have a very large lawn. We try to keep it up as much as we can. He has a trailer. He's there 2 to 3 hours a week. Where's he going to park? He cannot park in our driveway and back out. It's a 1-car driveway. He'd have to park across the street and bring lawnmowers and tractor and tools back and forth. Our garbage cans, without addressed. Right now, the garbage company wants us to put them on the curb. On site. If it's a red zone and cars are going 50 miles an hour past us, is that going to still be feasible? And the other question I did ask is how far away from our street on this proposal will the flow of traffic be? I would never been answered that. Are we still going to have an 8-foot buffer? Is it going to be a 2-foot buffer? Is it going to be right across the street? So I can go on and on and on. What I would like to suggest is, which we've done many times in my town, and I hate when people say we do it our way. I know you guys do it your way, and we'll do it your way. But we have a semi-town hall meetings with the neighbors, and let's go up there, let's walk the street. Let's have the engineer and have the project designer show us what they're doing. Let us show us our ideas, and let's come back. We have never opposed this project. We're not against growth of St. Helena. I'm a realtor for 30 years. I understand things have to grow. We need the hotels. We need the taxes. And we never opposed the hotel, and nor are we opposed to it now. Right. And one last thing I thought about when the engineer was speaking. The staff report says that these are the studies from the developer's engineer. That's a key word, a developer's engineer. Let's get an independent engineer out here. If I pay someone a lot of money, they're going to give me a report I want to see. And so I would like to see maybe an independent engineer's report.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeff Ellsworth, 1434 Sylvaner. Shannon Coletto is out of town and asked me to read her letter aloud. Honorable council members, my name is Shannon Coletto, and I live at 1830 Main Street, one of the properties directly and drastically affected by the city's proposed resolution to designate a no parking zone. I spoke 2 weeks ago to ask the council to please realize that the proposed solution will devastate the livability of our Main Street neighborhood of century-old homes. As none of these period homes were built with giant driveways or garages, we rely for safety and for delivery of all services on our ability to park on the east side of Main Street. Meanwhile, the west side of Main Street, which serves no residents or driveways all the way to Elmhurst, is not the side slated to be red zoned. It doesn't make sense. Public Works has noticed us that a compromise redesign that would serve the needs of the Las Alcobas Hotel without ruining our neighborhood's property access is not going to happen, that it is not feasible. This is a very hard pill to swallow and terrible news for the families here on Main Street. I'm asking tonight that the council please direct staff to do a deeper evaluation. We believe there are several alternatives that could go a long way to lessen the terrible impact of the current plan and still fulfill both Caltrans and hotel requirements. We have invested money and love in our homes, which are, by virtue of location, a significant northern scenic gateway into our town. We ask the council to direct the city to invest a little more time and design work to find a compromise that serves us all. Thank you for your consideration, Shannon Coletto. Also, I got a note from Sienna O'Connell, who owns a home there. She had never been notified of this, and she has many of the same concerns, and as do I. And I think that this is a great opportunity because the hotel people are here as our community, and this is a chance for our community to really work together to say, what's a compromise that works for you that also pleases the neighbors so that we can all be in this community together. So I think that this is a time to look deeper and exhaust every possible alternative so it can satisfy everybody. And I think we have a chance to do that here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment?
Thank you.
Well, let me close the public hearing and invite council comment. Is there any legal aspect to this that should be thrashed out here?
No, I think it's appropriate to consider that the context that Mr. Palmer explained earlier indicates that the council is either going to have to approve this as it's proposed, or the city will have to rethink with the hotel project applicant will have to rethink the conditions of approval of the hotel project and the environmental decision that was made in connection with that. So I think that from a legal perspective, what you have to remember is that if you don't approve this, it will take some rethinking of the original decision of the hotel. And I'm not sure, I haven't addressed that with the Public Works Department yet to see what exactly the consequences of that would be. But you do have a project approval that requires that some mitigation measure be done, and this mitigation measure is what's before you now.
I mean, my difficulty with this is that the mitigation measure was before the council back in 2010, and it was approved at that time. You can see it in the resolution, and you can see it in the mitigated negative declaration. On-street parking would be lost along both sides of Main Street from the intersection of Pratt Avenue, approximately 250 feet south of the project site as a result of the turn lane, both sides. So it was before the council, and the council approved it back then. So my question is, why isn't this just a ministerial act for us at this point in time?
Well, there is, in my view, some ambiguity in how that language is written, as Councilmember Krull pointed out. In other words, it is not specified where the no parking will go, whether that's on the west or the east side. So it is ministerial to you to make a decision that that requires that you either have to make a decision that requires this condition and this mitigation measure, or the project applicant is going to have to work with the city for an alternative. If there is no such alternative, that will be, in my view, a failure of that condition, and what the consequence of that would be that well, again, without working through with the city, with the planning department, the planning director, and the public works director, I don't know how integral that one condition was to the project approval. So I would have to defer to them to answer that question. You're absolutely right that this was a condition of approval, and the city is required to facilitate that in some manner.
Right.
Can I ask one other question? The alternative, does it require taking down 2 elm trees?
Potentially. We identified the widening does extend that far north to the elm trees. We haven't done a survey to determine exact location of the elm trees. We're basing it off an aerial photo. So we don't know for sure, but it's definitely, they're in the area of widening, and they're close enough to make us think that they would need to be taken, but I couldn't say for sure without, engineering level survey.
And I would just like to add that from staff's perspective, this is essentially a ministerial act implementing a mitigation measure that was previously approved and required to mitigate traffic impacts associated with the project. Caltrans requires a resolution from council to install red curbs. That's essentially what's before you today, is just blessing this for Caltrans. From staff's perspective, this decision was made previously, and this is just implementation of said decision to meet the environmental mitigation measures identified in the previously approved document.
And would your opinion be the same with respect to the west side of Main Street? Because the language there says both sides of the street, and I'm particularly concerned about a potential hazard that's really preying on me a little bit. I'm a little worried that we are creating something there that we don't want to create. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was to eliminate on the west side, first of all, and why are we not going forward with that?
Sure. So I wasn't a part of the original analysis or review of the project, but implementation or installation of the turn lane is the mitigation measure that's required. In order to construct that, parking has to be removed based on the opinions of our city engineer and multiple traffic engineers who have looked at this. The proposed design is the most appropriate design, meeting Caltrans standards as best possible given the existing constraints. And if the impacts to the alternative do push into the Elm Tunnel and potentially Behringer, then that essentially could require new CEQA analysis based on historic impacts, additional traffic impacts, additional potential habitat impacts, especially if the bridge gets involved. I mean, it's a significant modification to the previous approval.
I know.
And what about that suggestion about, like at Harvest Inn, the sharing of the turn lane? Is that feasible? I'm just...
Yeah, when I was listening to the comment from the public, my understanding was they were trying, that was in the context of moving the hotel driveway north. So the section between Pratt and the bridge would become the two-way left turn lane that you could be shared with the southbound traffic going onto Pratt and northbound traffic going into the hotel. So obviously, if we're talking about moving the hotel driveway entrance, the main that's a complete redesign of the project.
Right. That was certainly the subject of much discussion that even I recall from my days on the Planning Commission. Well, any further council comment here? Mr. White?
I think, there was a decision made in 2010, and that's what the applicant has been working off of. And also, during that time, there was plenty of notice out to all the neighbors that would be affected by this, and I think that was the time that all of the alternatives should have been addressed and were addressed, and so I think it is ministerial, and we just need to move on with it. So, I would propose a motion to pass the resolution and do it as planned.
Ms. Kroll, any further comment?
Well, I understand that. I am a little troubled by this because it bothers me to impact the neighbors in this manner. And I drive by there at least 4 or 5 times every day, so I'm very aware of that area. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's already been decided.
Just to let you know where I'm going with this, I would only support a motion with the motion that you proposed if it was amended to have a red zone on the west side, because I think that to me is the one hurdle I cannot overcome. I'm satisfied with all the other ones, and I understand the implications, but I think we are unfortunately creating a worse hazard for people, especially turning left from Elmhurst going northbound.
Are you suggesting red all the way from their driveway all the way to Elmhurst?
I'm not sure it needs to go that far, but pretty much, yeah.
Maybe here's what I would suggest here, is that assuming the votes are there, that we pass the resolution that's presented to us, and that we direct staff to come back and present us with the issue of the red zone as you see on the other side of the street, and then have a discussion that's limited to that. Does that make sense to you? So we can see what it looks like, how far it would go, and so on.
No, I don't think I followed the council direction there, or what the discussion is. I didn't quite understand.
Go ahead, Mr. Doring.
Well, I was proposing an amendment to the motion. Turn it on. Sorry, I was proposing an amendment to the motion that would have a red zone on the west side, pretty much equal to the east side, because of the hazard concerns I had. The mayor is suggesting that we pass, assuming we have the votes, that we go ahead and vote on the proposal, but with the idea that we'd come back and evaluate whether the west side should also have red zone all the way, to Elmhurst.
Mr. Mayor, if I might interject, I think your proposal is actually the correct one. I think, with due respect, that the amendment to the motion would present problems both from the Brown Act perspective and from CEQA perspectives. I think that the appropriate, if this is the council's direction, the appropriate course would be to accept the motion as originally proposed, with direction to staff to come back with information about the red zone on the west side of the street.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I ask another clarifying question? So is the concern with the parking on the west side is the ability of pedestrians to cross?
No, the concern is a sight line from the tree tunnel to Elmhurst when people are turning left from Elmhurst going northbound, that cars are going to be ending up parking on the west side if there is free parking there, and that it would be near impossible to see cars coming out of the tunnel. And you're creating a very serious hazard as people are turning left. And I think it is a hazard already, and we're only going to increase the hazard.
Although I would say that when the mayor talked about having the same distance on both sides of the street as resident, I actually think it's safer to have no parking from Elmhurst up to a certain level, just the opposite of what the other side is essentially.
That's fine. I
So
understand.
let's,
Whatever.
let's
This can be
bring that
evaluated.
back.
This can be evaluated. All right. I think where I stand was pretty much articulated by the Vice Mayor. I really have not much to add. I would only read one further sentence out of the 2010 study. These changes to the Main Street Pratt Avenue intersection will result in a significant improvement to the safety of traffic movements in the area by increasing sight lines and creating a more regular intersection. To me, those are also important words. This is a very difficult balancing act, but in my view, the balancing act was done in 2010, and where we are today is ministerial. So at this point, the chair would accept the motion made by Mr. White and invite a second. Ms. Scroll seconds?
No, I want you to second it.
I second it. All right. I get to second it once in a while. Ooh, bossed around. Very well. Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
No.
Okay. All right. That concludes our hearing this evening. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending.